Elvis Presley is being buried in Memphis. His fans mourn him in London. The Memphis authorities have called in 150 armed police and National Guardsmen to help control the fans. Elvis Presley died 2 days ago after a heart attack at the age of 42. Here's a report from Michael Brunson in Memphis.
The scenes here in Memphis have been extraordinary. The size of the crowd far more reminiscent of people waiting for an Elvis Presley rock and roll concert than for people waiting for his funeral. And the crowd has been so big that the authorities here have had a hard time controlling it. Before the funeral, Elvis Presley's body, dressed in a white dinner jacket, lay in a copper coffin for people to see, though not photograph, and that brought out the crowds, which had been small earlier. His house was besieged by people, up to 15,000 of them at any one time, the Memphis Police Department reckoned. The original arrangement was for the body to be on view for 2 hours, and as that deadline approached, people began to get a bit panicky, and they started pushing forwards towards the gates. As a result of that, and the temperature in the 90s, a lot of people collapsed, and they had to be carried to a makeshift first aid post on the front lawn of the mansion. Many of those who did make it inside seemed to wish they hadn't. Some came out with tears streaming down their faces, saying that it didn't look like Elvis, that he looked ill, that it was upsetting to see him. And when the gates were finally closed 1.5 hours later than originally planned, there were thousands who'd not got inside, who simply stayed on through the night. And it was into that nighttime crowd that the car was driven by a young man who's since been charged with, among other things, second-degree murder and drunken driving.
All of a sudden, this car come by and start hitting people. People flying all over the place and metal and everything else.
It's called malicious murder. That's what it is. I seen him pull out from up there at the red light and throw it to the floor deliberately to kill people.
In the last few moments, we've seen the final moments of the funeral, at least that part of it which the public will see. Something which thousands and thousands of people have been waiting in Memphis to see, lining the streets, the route which the cortege is taking. The actual service at Elvis Presley's house was private. The crowds were kept away, as they have been all along, at the perimeter of the house. And this drive of the funeral cortege from the house to a cemetery in Memphis, the same cemetery where Elvis Presley's mother is buried, this drive was the last thing that the public will see here in this city, which is mourning Elvis Presley. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Memphis, Tennessee.
In North London, hundreds of Presley fans queued for hours before a memorial service at Christ Church in Cockfosters. Many were unable to get into the church, and a second service was arranged immediately afterwards. Michael Oliver was there.
Hundreds flocked to the 2 services. For them, the king of rock and roll had been a lifetime's inspiration. Whether their tears were for the passing of a man or an era was another question.
Now, we are bereaved. Those of us who have in our place a heart for Elvis are much bereaved. And many of us are sad beyond measure.
Then the congregation sang one of Elvis's favorite songs. Fan spoke a eulogy.
Just so fantastic that you've all come. Just don't believe it. But I just wish you weren't here. All I would like to say is that we have sent a very large wreath to Elvis in the shape of an E, and we have on it, apart from having on it "To our beloved Elvis," we have the words from the chorus of the Long Black Limousine.
Perhaps